Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
Coming up on Arirang News. More than 3 years of the COVID emergency ends in South Korea, with the country lowering its alert level. Starting today, most restrictions are gone, including the mask mandate and the need for self-isolation. The latest trade data show South Korea recorded a trade deficit for a 15th straight month in May for the first time in more than 25 years. This amid a global economic slowdown and a sluggish outbound shipments of chips, the country's key export item. Growing the high-tech and biohealth sectors as South Korea's next mainstay industries to boost exports. President Yoon wants to create a Korean version of the Boston biotech cluster with a fair compensation system and eased regulations. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. South Korea opens up a post-pandemic era, downgrading the national crisis alert level for COVID-19. Starting today, most restrictions are lifted, including the mask mandate and the need to self-isolate. Our Choi Soo-young leads our coverage tonight.
From Thursday, June 1st, South Korea's national crisis level for COVID-19 will be downgraded from serious to alert. After a battle lasting 3 years and 4 months, the lasting remaining antivirus measures are no longer required. First, there will be no mandatory self-isolation for confirmed cases of COVID-19. People who catch COVID-19 are still recommended to self-isolate for 5 days, but it is no longer mandatory. The indoor mask mandates at clinics, doctors' offices and pharmacies will be lifted, except for high-risk facilities such as senior care centers and hospitals.
I feel much more comfortable. We didn't have to wear a mask except in clinics or pharmacies, but there was still the hassle of carrying a mask. It is much better because it's all lifted finally.
Incoming travelers will no longer be recommended to take a PCR test, and the testing centers for these travelers will be closed. The number of confirmed cases will now be reported weekly rather than daily. There are some concerns about easing regulations as COVID-19 has not been completely gone. However, the health authorities have determined that the situation in South Korea continues to improve, is being managed stably, and that the medical and response capacities are sufficient. Therefore, they announced the intention to transition from an emergency system to a daily management system.
The health authorities will follow a roadmap to adjust the crisis stage until COVID-19 becomes endemic, like influenza, and can be continuously managed, fulfilling their duty to protect people's health.
However, they stated that if a highly serious mutation occurs, they could consider raising the crisis alert level again. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
It took more than 3 years for this change. Mask wearing is no longer required in South Korea except for 1 or 2 places. But the virus hasn't disappeared completely, and so free COVID-19 vaccinations and treatment are still available. Our Shin Ha-young clarifies some of the changes. Starting Thursday, mask wearing is no longer required in places where it was previously mandatory, such as pharmacies and clinics. However, the mask mandate still applies to hospitals and long-term care facilities, as well as other medical venues with high infection risks. Here, hospital refers to medical centers that have more than 30 wards and provide medical procedures for inpatients. Under a new recommended isolation period of 5 days, even those who still have time remaining on their isolation periods are now no longer obligated to. The Ministry of Education suggests that students should not attend school for the recommended isolation period of 5 days. If students are absent due to this reason, their attendance is recognized as long as they can show proof such as their test results or a doctor's note. If they need to take an exam, they are required to wear a mask while doing so and can use a separate exam room. For companies and their workers, it varies. For example, Samsung Electronics implements 3 days of mandatory isolation, followed by 4 days of mandatory mask wearing. SK Innovation recommends working from home for 5 days, while Lotte Group offers a choice between working remotely for 5 days or using annual leave. The government is encouraging companies to establish a culture where individuals can take time off when they are sick. The Ministry of Employment and Labor recommends employees use paid or unpaid leave. However, there are still over 10,000 new cases every day, and the risk of new variants emerging remains. So the government has decided to maintain free COVID-19 vaccinations and treatment. It also decided to continue providing financial support for individuals with a median income of 100% or below. Only those who choose to follow the 5-day recommended isolation period are eligible to get the financial support. 신하영, Arirang News.
On the trade front, Korea's exports in May fell for the 8th month in a row, keeping the trade balance in the red for more than a year. Our Lee Soo-jin has the latest figures.
South Korea's exports continued to fall last month. Data from the Trade Ministry on Thursday shows that the value of exports fell 15.2% from the previous year to $52.2 billion in May. That's the 8th consecutive month that monthly exports have seen an on-year drop. The downward trend in exports is largely due to the slump in semiconductors, the nation's key export item. Chip exports last month fell more than 36% compared to the previous year. They have seen an on-year decline since last August. According to the Trade Ministry, May's poor export figures were partly down to the base effect after the country posted its second highest ever export figures in May the previous year. Exports to 6 major areas such as China, the US, the ASEAN region, and the EU all dropped compared to the year before. The country's exports to China last month, however, recovered to the $10 billion mark, and the daily value of exports was the highest since last October. Meanwhile, imports were down 14% from the previous year to $54.3 billion last month. With exports continuing to fall short of imports, the nation logged a trade deficit of $2.1 billion. This is the 15th consecutive month that the trade balance has remained in the red and the longest deficit since the 1997 Asian financial crisis. However, after peaking at more than $12 billion in January, the trade deficit is beginning to shrink. Last month was the second straight month since June last year that the deficit has been below the $2 billion mark. The Trade Ministry said it will focus on supporting and marketing promising export items as well as diversifying the export market. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea is counting on the high-tech and biohealth sectors by growing them as the next mainstay industries for an economic breakthrough. President Yoon stresses the urgency to create a Korean version of the Boston biotech cluster with a fair compensation system and eased regulations. Our top office correspondent, Oh Soo-young, has more.
President Yoon has stressed the urgency of creating ecosystems for high-tech ventures and world-class collaborations for South Korea to overcome its slowing exports in the long run. On Thursday, Yoon presided over the government's 5th export strategy meeting, focusing on ways to build innovation clusters for new cutting-edge technologies. Inspired by the tech ecosystem in Boston, which the president visited in April, Yoon said the country's exports and overseas expansion of critical industries depend on its international competitiveness as a hotbed of innovation.
거기서 많은 경제적 가치를 창출할 수 있고 그렇게 함으로써 우리 국민들 또 미래 세대들에게 아주 좋은 그런 일자리를 만들어 줄 수 있는 것입니다.
Yoon called for stronger linkages between industry and academia through joint research, along with more international exchanges and cooperation in developing advanced technologies. This would, according to President Yoon, allow South Korea to reap the benefits of commercialization. However, to attract the best companies, talent and investors, he said a fair compensation system must be established, while unnecessary regulations should be scrapped based on the principles of the free market system.
정부의 역할은 뭔가를 얻어내서 그걸로 정부가 가져갈 건 없습니다. 우리 학계 또 연구자들과 또 우리 민간을 얼마나 활성화시킬 수 있느냐. 활성화를 시키면 거기서 경제적 가치가 나오고 우리 경제가 또 성장을 하고 기업이 크면 정부는 나중에 세금으로서 그걸 받아가면 되는 겁니다.
Since November, Yoon has held export strategy meetings to urgently address the country's weakening exports, which accounted for as much as 45% of gross domestic product last year, according to figures from the Bank of Korea. Yoon has highlighted the need to invest in clusters in leading technologies, most notably the semiconductor and biohealth industries, and utilize artificial intelligence and data science to proliferate advancements in research, as well as commercial products and solutions. This, he says, requires removing red tape and attracting large-scale investments. The Yoon government has set this year's export target at $685 billion, up 0.2% from last year. 오수영, Arirang News.
As we just heard, Korea is looking to the future with a new focus on high-tech industries like biotech that's growing more prominent in the global market. Our Moon Hae-ryun went to find out more about this particular industry and the current hurdles it faces.
With the nation's semiconductor industry slowing, the South Korean government has decided to focus its efforts on 6 new future industries as new growth engines. And biotechnology is at the forefront of it all.
I'm here at NextRise, South Korea's biggest startup fair, and I'll be taking a look at some of the country's up-and-coming biotechnology firms.
Other than providing a space for startup firms to network and present their products and services, NextRise this year will be offering awards from the Korean International Trade Association to 4 companies, giving them the chance to attend the world's biggest IT show in the United States later this year. Organoid Sciences was one of the 14 finalists with its organoids, a miniaturized 3-dimensional human organ grown in a lab.
We evaluate the efficacy of drugs, but we're also expanding the platform so it can be used by a number of different related industries.
When asked about the support needed by biotechnology startup firms such as Organoid Sciences, the chief technical officer had this to say.
Because of the sheer nature of the biotech industry, projects are long-term and the technical barriers are high. So I think what needs to be done to foster startups is to look at support from a long-term perspective.
Biopharma companies are also currently struggling with their current position in the market.
It's clear that the bio industry is developing a lot in South Korea and attracting a lot of attention worldwide. However, recently, it has been very difficult with the end of the COVID-19, and it is true that interest is actually waning quite a bit. So now there's an inclination to push it back a bit in the financial market.
With the global bio industry predicted to grow at an annual rate of nearly 8%, the South Korean government plans to foster its bio industry by launching a detailed support plan within the month. It is expected to address key issues such as labor shortages. Last year, the biohealth industry faced one of the largest shortages among production industries at 3.4%. Whether the government will come up with a long-term plan the way industry insiders are hoping for remains to be seen. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In the U.S., the House of Representatives has voted in favor of suspending the government's borrowing cap through January 1st, 2025. The vote took place Wednesday evening local time, just days ahead of the June 5th deadline, after which pundits had predicted a devastating default that would trigger ripple effects beyond the U.S. economy. The Fiscal Responsibility Act, hammered out by President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, was approved by a wide vote margin of 314 to 117. The act now heads to the Senate for a vote. President Biden has praised the House for passing the bipartisan bill and is pushing the Senate to do the same. The operation by South Korean authorities to search for and retrieve parts of North Korea's purported space launch vehicle continues. What's seen as a part of the second stage of propulsion has already been collected from the West Sea, but more time is needed for further analysis. Our North Korea affairs correspondent Kim Mo-kyun with the details.
South Korea continues efforts to search for and retrieve more parts of North Korea's space launch vehicle that was found floating in the sea along the west coast of Ochongdo Island on Wednesday.
We have dispatched ships and aircraft to recover more debris and are conducting an operation to salvage parts of what North Korea claimed was a space launch vehicle.
Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the size of the debris found by the military is around 15 meters long with a diameter of 2 to 3 meters. The military shared pictures of a large cylindrical object floating in the sea, but it dropped to the seabed at a depth of around 75 meters. The vehicle, dubbed by North Korea as the Cholima-1 rocket, is estimated by experts to be around 30 meters long, which means the debris is around half the entire portion. The Navy has mobilized warships, aircraft, and divers, but there are restrictions, including poor visibility and time constraints. South Korea's Defense Minister Lee Jong-sup says that the salvage operation could take around 2 more days. Speaking to lawmakers on Thursday, Lee reported that the already identified part of the wreckage appears to be the second stage of a rocket, and that the military is working to trace the third stage and the payload. The minister also said that the technology used to build the rocket looks identical to that for making an intercontinental ballistic missile. Regarding the site of the launch, Lee said that North Korea's latest launch took place at a new launching facility built in a site in Dongchangri, Pyeongan-bukdo province. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
South Korean military authorities unveil for the first time a successful test of the long-range surface-to-air missile, or LSAM system, demonstrating the country's counter-missile capabilities amid North Korea's aggressive ambitions. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-sung was on site.
Over South Korea's western coast, a mock missile roars into the sky at supersonic speed. Moments later, some 200 kilometers away, another missile ignites and gives chase. The second missile rapidly closes the gap until... This is South Korea's long-range surface-to-air missile system, known as LSAM, a key component of the country's missile defense shield. It aims to shoot down North Korea's ballistic missiles in the case of an attack. The LSAM defense boasts a stunning accuracy, using homegrown cutting-edge precision tracker and kill vehicle. This enables it to track and destroy missiles, moving at supersonic speeds high up in the atmosphere. The South Korean Agency for Defense Development unveiled the LSAM to the press for the first time in trials this week. Onlookers, including journalists and Defense Minister Lee Jong-sup, held their breath as they watched. The test was a success.
As you just saw, the intercepting missile directly hit the target missile exactly on the spot that we had originally planned. Based on the success of this test, we are on track to complete the development phase in a timely manner.
Defense Minister Lee Jong-sup hailed this technology as the core of the core in South Korea's stratified missile defense system. Development of the LSAM is scheduled for completion next year, followed by a production run in 2025. Full deployment within South Korea's military is expected before the close of the decade. But the Agency for Defense Development isn't resting on its laurels. Research and development is underway on the LSAM-2, an upgraded model with a capability to target supersonic missiles even higher in the sky. This comes as part of an ongoing commitment to innovate and evolve defense technologies to protect against potential threats from North Korea. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
The annual Jeju Forum kicked off this week with a focus on working together toward peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. Highlighted in the forum was the need to strengthen international cooperation amid North Korea's evolving threats. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung files this report from Jeju.
The Indo-Pacific has become a new center of global cooperation in addressing multiple security threats, especially with continued nuclear threats from North Korea. Speaking at the opening ceremony of Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity 2023 on Thursday, South Korean Prime Minister Han Duk-soo stressed the importance of the three-way alliance between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo for the peace and prosperity of the region.
The biggest threats to the Indo-Pacific region today are North Korea's nuclear threats and missile provocations. Through trilateral cooperation and international solidarity, we intend to strongly block North Korea's provocation and pursue the denuclearization of North Korea.
Former Secretary General of the UN Ban Ki-moon urged the international community to work together given the challenging global situation.
The global challenges before us now are unprecedented. Any individual or country, however strong or resourceful one may be, cannot solve such problems alone.
Speaking at a session on expanding global cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, South Korea's second Vice Foreign Affairs Minister Lee Do-hoon shared how South Korea plans to contribute to the Indo-Pacific. The official said one way is to strengthen non-proliferation and counter-terrorism efforts across the region, as North Korea continues to pose serious security threats.
In this regard, we condemn North Korea's so-called military reconnaissance satellite yesterday and clearly reaffirm international community's determination to denuclearize the North outweigh North Korea's nuclear ambitions.
This year's Jeju Forum was held under the theme of working together for sustainable peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific, with the strategic importance of the region rapidly increasing with regard to global security and prosperity. On top of security issues, leaders and experts also called on the need to tackle common challenges like climate change, supply chain issues, and widening digital gap. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Jeju.
The U.S. and Japan have pledged to bolster trilateral cooperation with South Korea to be fully prepared for more rocket launches from the north. According to gov't News, during a meeting in Tokyo on Thursday, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Japan's Defense Minister Yasukazu Hamada condemned the regime's rocket launch and agreed to strengthen their monitoring and vigilance for any extra launches. Austin pledged to take all necessary measures to ensure the security of the U.S. and its allies, stating that the regime's launch as a continuous provocative action. The two sides also confirmed their cooperation with South Korea and Australia in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's military buildup. South Korea's Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Foreign Ministry's decision not to disclose related documents of a 2015 Seoul-Tokyo agreement signed to resolve the issue of comfort women, Korean women who were forced into sexual slavery by Japan before and during World War II. In 2016, a lawyer filed a suit against the foreign minister, demanding the disclosure of documents regarding negotiations between the foreign ministers of Seoul and Tokyo that led to the agreement. The district court had initially ruled in favor of the lawyer and ordered the disclosure of the documents, saying that protecting the national interest by keeping them secret did not outweigh the greater public interest. But the appellate court overturned that decision, saying bilateral relations could be seriously damaged if the documents were released. The country's Supreme Court upheld the ruling on Thursday and dismissed the lawyer's appeal.
Summer heat is forecast to sweep across the nation tomorrow. Most regions will be under sweltering spells for the daytime. For Seoul, maximum temperatures will be in the similar range at 27 degrees Celsius. Other regions such as Jeonju and Daegu will see more scorching conditions. Extreme heat can lead to dehydration, so make sure to drink plenty of water and stay hydrated. Showers will continue for parts of the south until tomorrow morning. Mountainous regions of Jeju Island and the south coast will see heavy rainfall of up to 80 millimeters. Parts of Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces will see up to 60. The surrounding regions will see 5 to 20, and raindrops are expected for parts of Gyeonggi-do province. We'll see a mix of clouds and rainy spells for the morning hours. Seoul will be starting off at 18 degrees tomorrow. Most regions will be under clear skies by the daytime. Highs in Seoul will get up to 27, Gwangju 29. Daegu and Gyeongju will be scorching at 30 degrees Celsius. And daytime heat will continue for the remainder of the week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for this Thursday night newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest news. Have a lovely night.
Global leader of eco-friendly future materials. Green tomorrow with POSCO.
In what sort of environments do new enterprises typically flourish and succeed? It should be a place that helps an enterprise to grow.